solutions to our future and present. A look into the latest technologies, new scientific discoveries, and how they might be used in connection to the human domain and controlling it, ancient cultures and places. Be warned. This is an opinionated look through headlines. Guests that are not afraid to question the narrative. A little bit of crazy ramblings of a stoner conspiracy factist that pushes constitutional concepts. The place and the time are the same, another dimension we call Mountain High Time. Saturdays 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Mountain High Time. Right here on revolution.radio, where information never sleeps and truth breaks the spell.
Tune in to the Family Industrial Complex podcast here on Revolution Radio, Studio B, every Wednesday, 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Get fit, empowered, physically, mentally, and spiritually.
Alert, listen up now. Tune into Two Corner with Control 0XE05173. We talk about decentralization and bank annihilation. Bitcoin, Litecoin, Litecoin, your coin, blockchain, baby. Mondays at 1600 hours Eastern, Studio A.
Deep understanding must arise during these times of unparalleled deceit. A view into the depths of society upon which this country has fallen. A storm brews upon the horizon. It's been said that those that have the eyes to see and the ears to hear will play a paramount role in the furthering of humanity and civilized society. But can civilized society and humanity survive the coming conflicts not seen since a dawn of time in ages bypast? But you can find true forms of information and knowledge in abundance at revolution.radio, freedomsluts.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the globe. Stand upon the right side of history.
General Homer, you gotta get us out of here now! I won't let you down. I won't let you down, son.
Revolution.
Fire! I'll take you to burn. Fire! I'll take you to learn. I'll see you burn. You fought hard and you saved and earned, but all of it's gone to burn. And your mind, you tied in mind, you know you've really been so bad. Now's your time to burn your mind, you fall apart, you fall behind. Oh no, you're gonna burn. Fire.
Welcome to Crosstalk with Sara Cross, a place for radio wanderers to learn about the highest laws and other related topics, with the occasional stroll through more relaxed notions. Now here's your host, Sara Cross.
And welcome to Crosstalk, and I'm your host, Sara Cross. And before we begin, like always, I want to give a big shout out to Revolution Radio. Check out the website and all the great hosts, and if you can throw a few bucks their way, that always goes a long way in showing your support to a platform dedicated to free speech. This week we have Marja West, and we are going to be talking about a handful of topics which we really think are important: Kung Fu energy mastery, handling trolls, online disagreements, shadow work, and the trauma of the masculine-feminine dynamic. And as always, feel free to message me with your thoughts and questions. And so let's get started on with our main topic today. And I'm going to introduce Marja West and let her talk a little bit about herself, for the work she does, and where you can find her. So, Marja, can you hear me okay?
I can. Hi, Sarah. Nice to be here.
Thanks for coming on, and I'm excited to hear about, having this conversation today and seeing where we can go with it.
Indeed, and especially in light of the fact that there has been a shift in the energy field of this planet, as far as I'm concerned, even though I don't participate in the sort of politicking of it, but there's definitely a visceral upliftment, and I think a lot of it is really based on our collective shadow work within our communities. I think that over the last, say, 5 years leading up to the sort of demonic pandemic, etc., of the COVID, we've been in this sort of weird soup of disinformation that has been intensified, and also a polarization of the sort of victim perpetrator polarity dynamic, and endeavoring to try to make heads or tails of it. So I know that for myself, when this all started happening, I was in the middle of my work, based in London, promoting my book, and doing my work, doing workshops on trauma-based mind control deactivation and de-armoring, which has been really the cornerstone of my life's work, pushing 40 years now. And what's interesting is that it all came to a halt when the powers that want to be really tripled down on the sort of mind control, whatever you want to call it, PSYOP, call it whatever you like, where the control was just really just kind of squashed down upon us. And those of us who were able to resist the needlecraft, to resist, I think that all of us are somewhat breathing a sigh of relief at the moment, based on the outcome of the clown show called our political scene. And that being said, I think that it is important, especially for all of us, to remain really anchored, centered, vigilant in our true north. And what I mean by that, vigilant in what it is that each of us are lit up by, our creative nature, because we are here, each and every one of us, regardless of how we feel about whatever, okay? We are here to create formless into form. And unless you know that, without any kind of doubt in your own heart, mind, body, soul, spirit, you're in trouble. And I think that is the biggest problem in the divide within the matrix, is that there is this sort of identity to trauma, our narrative, our stories, our aches and pains and wanting to weaponize that and blame everybody else except taking personal responsibility. And I know just said a mouthful. Jump in, interrupt me, sweetheart.
No, I agree with that. Like people become, and it's gotten worse, and I'd say probably the last easily at least 10 years.
Yes.
Where it's really ramped up, and it's a race to the bottom, and everybody wants to go home with a trophy for being the most victimized or the most mentally ill. And this is a problem. And like, I mean, I see this pretty directly, even because, I mean, you know, my story, I have a quote child's disease where I like grew up in an environment where it's all based around a hyper amount of empathetic emotion, and it's mixed with the medical industry, which is like this really bad mix of, you know, emotions that are not like, because people don't have their thoughts, emotions, and actions in order. So it's like overdrive on empathy, and a mix of like pharmaceuticals that's really just making it even worse.
Yes.
So I see that really all the way.
It's an intense cocktail to try to navigate that. And I know that in the work that I do, and I've been accused of being very harsh because, and I want to caveat this by saying that it is important to understand our stories, to understand our traumas, to really see the pathway of its development, its evolution, and to not just revolt against it, but to also evolve and uplift yourself from it by disidentifying. And so a lot of the people that work with me, you either love me or you hate me, because the people who hate me want to repeat their story ad nauseum. And it's not just the repeating of the story, it is the identification with victim consciousness and what I call weaponized woundology, where you are gonna take a torch and, by God, God is all that is, you're gonna go out into the world, the matrix at large, and you're gonna weaponize it and blame everybody. And if people don't agree with you, then you are the enemy. And that is a huge problem. And it is a huge, it's a huge demonic cesspool, if you will, that allows human disempowerment, spiritual misalignment, disconnection to grow, and to not just grow, but to also feed the demons that are actually running this reality. And so a lot of the work that I do with people who do see through the lens of their victimization, you know, they're willing to burn in what I call the fires of love, truth, and beauty, you know, to recognize that you are love in a body with consciousness, to understand the truth of that, and also the truth of the reality that you exist in. And also understand that you actually have the power to disengage, because, you know, the powers that want to be, they need us. They need our creative energy in order to exist. And we have been brainwashed to actually believe that we need them, which is why, you know, the sort of weaponization of gooberment, you know, gooberment is slavery, folks. I mean, it really, really is. And you have to understand that. And the components of gooberment, it's got all these facets in it, you know, the big pharma, big tech, all of this stuff. And also the weaponization of the divide between the masculine and feminine, men and women, being and doing, creating, and, you know, getting sucked in to the depths of despair. And we have to like really be aware of all of this. So it requires, I think, and I know you know this, a lot of personal responsibility regarding our personalized story, regarding our ability to like really, I mean, for lack of a better way to put it, pull our heads out of our butts, honestly. And because if you don't do that, you are in essence a narcissist of your own doing, because your story and your victimization and your is all about you, and you expect everybody to tippy-toe around you and cater to your bullshit. And I know that sounds harsh for a lot of people, and you know, it is what it is. And I don't like to hold back. And yet I do a lot of hand holding, because a lot of the people that I've worked with they are survivors of generational trafficking. And I'm talking labor trafficking. I'm also talking child sex trafficking. And I've been to many, 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 many different parts of the world, and I have witnessed firsthand the aftermath of all of this stuff that most people just, you know, they don't want to hear, la, 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 TMI, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to believe it. So this active denial, or the active cognitive dissonance that a lot of folks are willing to succumb to, is actually what helps perpetuate all of the evil in the world. And so, you know, part of my work is part of the YouTube channel that I have of, and it's the second one, because I have been silenced many, many times, where I've had my shit wrecked. I've had all of my organizations burned to the ground. The COVID ruined a lot of stuff for me. And so when I started the latest YouTube channel, LoveTruth&Beauty, January 2nd, 2020, where was I? I was in Berlin, wondering how I was going to get home, because I had gotten dropped by the publisher because I was not falling into line. So, you know, when you think about how our lives seemingly things happen that sort of ruin things, or you have these unexpected turnabouts, unexpected shit shows that happen. At the end of the day, it's all for the best. And that is part of extricating yourself from the whole victim consciousness thing. Because I remember, you know, when I was sort of barred from traveling at that point, and I was stuck in Europe, that I was going, oh dear, you know, I'm being targeted again. A couple of years before that, my longtime assistant had died suddenly. She just died suddenly. And after 21 years, I was faced with doing this work in my organization on my own. And she was the genius, the muscle behind all of my work. And so it was easy for me to sort of fall into the sort of victim consciousness thing. I'm being targeted again, I'm being stopped, and and you know, you just got to pull yourself out of that. You can't succumb to that. And I think that being a sort of a pioneer of sorts, because I've been at this for so long. I have been talking about this since the 70s, since I was a teenager, since I was at university, and starting very, very young at university, where you have all these shitstems, such as very pro-Marxist universities in the San Francisco Bay Area of California, as I would say, endeavoring to recruit you into their fake feminist camps, you know, because I checked off all these different boxes of being an immigrant and a brown-skinned woman, and it was during the early days of affirmative action. And so, you know, I was exposed early on to this bullshit narrative of women being victims and women being oppressed by men and the patriarchy and on and on and on and on. And for my, and not only to mention, not to forget to mention the pushing of the narrative of systemic racism, which honestly, I never experienced it. I really didn't. You know, I didn't. And so, and I'm not denying the experiences of people who have experienced it, but for me, I can't cop to it. And yet these people were pushing this narrative onto me. And I was like, you know, what is happening here? And it took me a little while to, you know, sort of understand, oh, I see what's going on, you know. And I had read the Gulag Archipelago. I had read a lot of sort of communist, socialist, Marxist shit, only because you know, I have a family background on both sides, on both camps, my mom and dad, of escaping communism and socialism. So it was very dear to me to understand, what is the flavor of this? What is the attraction to the far left agenda? And discovering that, you know, the sort of Nazi stuff of what was called the far right was actually incorrect. It was another arm of the far left. So, and endeavoring to correct people for that, it's like, it got me into a lot of trouble. So I put myself, I feel like, on the front lines of a lot of trouble because I won't agree. I won't throw people under the bus. And if you throw me under the bus, oh, well, I will get up and I will stand on my own. So I think that has been a sort of superpower of mine to prevail regardless, you know. And I am a very solitary person, even though I find myself in a lot of different circles throughout my life in the world and on social media, and yet I don't belong to any of these groups. I have disagreements with every one of these groups. And am I going to hate on people because we have disagreements? Of course not. But the climate of the divide and conquer, it seems to require that divide. It seems to require that black and white thing that if you don't agree with me, if you don't agree with us in this echo chamber, then fuck you. And I'm like, okay, fuck me.
And
I don't care.
That's something I've noticed a lot too. Everybody's got to go. Everybody's got to be right. Everybody's got to go, nah. And that's the argument that they put forward without any real basis for anything. And I'm the same with you. Like, I never experienced like anything real as far as a discrimination because I'm a woman. So that's like never, I mean, of course you come across people, and I've come across men and women who will who will have discriminated against women. I mean, I've heard people say these things. Men and women do it. They both do it. So, and I've heard them both do it. So, but it's rare. It's like such a minuscule amount of the human global population that it's hardly even relevant. And they're all, usually it's all done in very like subtle ways, which, you know, people wouldn't even recognize that, oh, this is the mindset of that person. But I mean, honestly, most of the discrimination I've ever experienced through my life is because of medical reasons. And so, and people, they don't even look at that. And I started looking at that. I started noticing that myself, where it's like, yeah, okay. The thing is like, even people who claim they've been discriminated against, or people who have actually been discriminated against, whether they're, you know, whatever, you know, Jewish or Black or whatever it is, you know, or women even, or people who are homosexual. And yes, these things have taken place in our history, but also it's just medical discrimination has taken place. Sorry about that. Medical discrimination has taken place for centuries. You could go all the way back in our history and it's there. Yeah. So, and not once has anybody ever addressed it. I've never heard anybody address that part of it. So that was my take on all of that stuff, because it's the one thing that I saw that was across the board. So yeah, and everybody who goes out there, and it's always about, no, I'm right, and the nuh-uh argument, and the what if a dragon argument, and it's nobody ever comes to any kind of terms about anything. And like, yeah. I've argued with people, be like, okay, I get it. You can have whatever, you know, opinion or perspective you want, but there should be only one goal. And there should be everybody on the same page that morality is objective, truth is objective. Mm-hmm. And if you can get behind that, then that's where you kind of start. And then you get your thoughts, emotions, and actions in order. Yes. You know, put all your baggage and, you know, put it in a backpack and get it together, and, you know, realize that it's okay to, like, you know, see differences and have differences. That's the beauty of being a human being. We're unique. We're supposed to be different. We're supposed to be experiencing this reality, this physical reality, in all these different ways, because it's kind of the point. I feel like that's the point of experiencing life and death. And people overcomplicate what's the meaning of life, And what about what's God? How do you blah, blah? They overcomplicate these ideas, and it's like, really, you're making it more difficult for other people to just come to terms with, okay, yeah, we don't see eye to eye on this, like, one subject, say the shape of the planet, for some God knows reason, but who cares? Who cares? You know, if you follow the line that morality is objective and truth is objective, and you understand that you don't violate people's rights, then okay, we're fine. Yeah. That's fine. You know, nothing else, none of the other details really matter in the end, in the long run.
It's an amazing, I think, nexus point to reach, where you discover that everyone is co-creating their own layer of the universe, and that the whole idea of this blanket reality that we all need to be trapped under, okay, is just bizarre. It just is, like, strange to me. And so the objective morality piece, I think, is, like, super important, because people have to get to the point where you are in utter acceptance that everyone is different from you and has the right to exist just like you. That was huge. It was huge for me. And I got it when I remember being 8 years old, thinking, oh, yeah. And I remember feeling this energy just sort of explode, like my heart exploded with that I wasn't trapped in this, this trying to control reality, trying to control other people, trying to get what I want, because I was uncomfortable. And I liked what you said about, taking all your stuff and putting it in a backpack, and keeping that in check, because, dealing with our story and our traumas, it's not a one and done. And I know for myself, I've had various aspects of my story, my trauma, hit me in the face, bite me on the ass, nip at my heels, where I'm like, fuck, are we done? Are we done here? And it has always yielded some platinum nugget about unhooking another concretized form of mind control or weaponized emotions, where I was going to hold myself either hostage or hold another hostage for my comfort. And it's the ultimate, I think, in self-responsibility, where you got to check yourself. You got to check yourself, and it is a moment to moment thing. And that is the whole thing about in reality transurfing. It's called being in the center screen, existing in your center screen, rather than being weaponized in the outer screen of whatever's going on in your surroundings and whatever is going on in your head, usually in reaction to whatever the hell is going on outside of you. And to be in the middle and observing all of that and checking your reactivity, your responses, and the sort of knee-jerk things. And most of it is wanting to run away or wanting to distract yourself or wanting to react and make somebody wrong, or wanting to like numb out. So there's a whole lot of things going on that we actually have the ability, when we are awake and conscious, to track in that observation and stick to the morality code of doing no harm to yourself and doing no harm to others. And I've tried to explain this. This used to be one of my signature talks, and I would be invited in a lot of so-called goddess entrepreneurial events, feminist events, because they take a look at me and they have a judgment about who they think I am, and they think I'm one of them. So it's been kind of fun. I gotta say, I relish my entrance into a lot of these realms, because then I'll just drop it. I'll drop natural law. I'll drop the hermetic principles. I'll drop the weaponization of the masculine and feminine and the inversion of the patriarchy with the gynocracy. And you should see these women lose their shit, because they are so indoctrinated in men being bad and women being good and victimized, usually victimized, and that, payback and, karma is coming. And then I go into the whole thing about karma being a trap along with reincarnation, and they just lose their fucking minds. And it's fun, because that is part of my purpose, if you will. I am a provocateur. And I used to wonder, why did I say that? Why didn't I just shut my mouth? Why did I not control what was coming out of my mouth? And I realized, part of my fun, I've got Gemini in the 5th house. And so it's all about, at the end of the day, having a lot of fun and just poking fun at the shit that we do to ourselves, at the sort of concretized ideas where, when you have a concretized idea, there's no room for growth. There's no room for change. There's no room for evolution. There's no room to apologize for being wrong. And I think that one of the superpowers that we ultimately have, when we have embodied the true nature of reality and embodied objective reality and objective morality, is the ability to admit that you're wrong and to create that open space of wisdom. And of course, wisdom doesn't happen through just information or experience. It happens through integration of all these things, along with extricating all the various narratives that can distort objective reality and objective truth. And, you know, I tell you, one of my favorite things to drop that, and you can see the minds going, whoa, what just happened here, is that the truth doesn't give two shits about how you feel. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
And we live in this reality, you know, in the matrix, in the sort of reality at large, with the public of the NPCs, where that is like so offensive, you know, and the herd will come for you. And you know, I don't want to have anything to do with the herd hurting the herd. You know, I can't stand it, which makes traveling a little bit tricky because you know, when you travel, there is a certain herding that is done when you're going through security checks and through surveillance and through all that kind of stuff. And I poke fun of it, you know. I'm just I'm making animal noises because it's part of the. I'm like, okay, I'm here. This is what I'm going to do, and people are very uncomfortable with that, because I think a lot of it is because they realize, you know, there's a reality to this. And that's part of it, is that we pick and choose in a self-responsible way how we're going to navigate certain things when we want to do certain things, like traveling the world. You know, you travel the world, there's certain things that you have to deal with. End of story. And you can raise hell all you want, and, you know, and that is your prerogative to do that. So, you know, I'm dressed in a hoodie and I've got reflecto sunglasses and all that kind of stuff. And I just kind of, you know, making hurting noises because it's ridiculous. And I want to travel. I want to do what I want to do. So, you know, there is that. So we're navigating these very tricky journeys, a lot of slippery slopes, a lot of inconveniences, and a lot of polarities, or a lot of realities that come crashing into one another. And it is not one of those things where a certain strategy will work all the time. And so I think that's part of the work that I do, is teaching people through Kung Fu energy Kung Fu mastery, to waltz in and out of the matrix and to be able to do it undetected. And there's a way to do it. And there's a way to do it I call it going stealth. You know, it's almost like this cloak of invisibility, where, because we do have, I think, autonomy over our energy fields. You just have to know how to do it. And it is a learned skill, and it's an easy, practical skill that you can put into play and practice in anytime, anywhere, you know, standing in line, you know.
And I just want to add to that, like, you know, this all has to do with like doing the personal work, you know, what, you know, some people call it shadow work. Some people just call it working on yourself, or their New Year's resolution, or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really matter. But the idea behind it is that, you know, and I think a lot of people are kind of confused about this. They think it's this like whole thing. And I think they've been scared out of their wits to do stuff like this, because really people, you know, people hear, oh, it's difficult. It can be painful. It can be, it's really hard. And you really got to like be honest with yourself and with others in regards to, and people hear this kind of stuff. And like with my own experiences and the things I've come across, is people, this is a fear-based response, that people don't want to do this because they're afraid of pain, suffering, And ultimately, it's a fear-based response because they think of pain and they think it's all an external thing. And sometimes it's more than that. And but they don't understand that, they come out of it and then they're like, okay, I'm okay. And they've learned from it, and they don't understand that, like, in the next time they're around here, starting from scratch, it's going to be like a stepping stone for them, and they're going to go. Now, I mean, and I know not everybody like buys reincarnation as a thing. I personally have seen enough to tell me that it's very much a large possibility, because some things that, I mean, of course, people come out and they are just, lying. But, that's where you gotta use those discernment skills and be like, and the thing is like, you can see even like one of the examples I really like with that is with people they master themselves, they do the shadow work, they get their, thoughts, emotions, and actions in order, whatever amount of time that takes. You could be 99 years old and you finally do it. The thing is like in the next life, you're going to have another chance to step up and create another stepping stone for yourself. I mean, it's just what feels correct to me. And not in any kind of mystical or religious or whatever kind of way. It's just like what feels normal, feels like logical to me. So, I mean, one of the examples I really like is it Mozart or Beethoven? I can't always remember. I think it's Mozart. Or it's Amadeus. I know that.
Mozart.
That's what I thought. And I think it was him. He was like 5 years old, and he's always like, he's already like killing it as a pianist. True. Like killing it, like playing for like heads of states, number one on the list, like already a sensation at like 5, 6 years old. And to me, people are like, oh, that's natural talent. And I'm like, no, this kid has got remnants from the past in him. And because at 5 years old, very few kids are that coordinated, because you got to be coordinated and you got to understand math pretty well to be a musician. I mean, at least to that caliber. So, I mean, these are like, it's stuff like that. And I think that it's really important that if people just stopped living in fantasy, accepted truth, no matter how dark it seems, do the work on themselves, the shadow work or whatever you want to call it, really take that time to figure out who you are without society at large telling you who you are.
That is what really you are. Point.
Then, like, because that's all it is. It's like, that's all I see is this rampant, like, oh, well, I'm this, that, and the other thing. I identify as whatever, it's just, who cares? Who cares about that stuff? Like, are you a human being who is a fraction of spirit or God or whatever you want to call it? Are you a intelligent part of this creative force, or aren't you?
Yeah.
Like, it's one or the other, and you got to jump. Like, those are the two bandwagons you either got to jump on or jump off of.
Yeah.
And figure it out, I think, is like, it's just like healthy for yourself, and nobody should be doing it for anybody other than themselves.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. And that's one of the foibles of the Matrix, is the Matrix defines who you are. And most people are spectators. They're not creators, they're not transmitters, they're just receiving this haphazard information. They don't discern, they don't question reality, they just sort of fall in line. And so this sort of reversal or the self-correcting, I feel like the universe is correcting itself, that we're coming out of this this murky, shitty soup of an attempted takeover by the powers that want to be. And, it was for 4 or 5 years. And, even before that, setting up over that, like you said, the last 10 years, it's gotten amplified and amplified and amplified. And I know that for myself over the years, just witnessing the various Matrix World clown shows of this, that, and the other thing, to be definitely afraid of, this group or that group or this ethnicity or whatever. And it's ridiculous. And most people they're just so beaten down and so disconnected from their own creative natures and their spirits and their hearts. The what I call heart, mind, body, soul, spirit coordination is just completely obliterated. And so they're willing to just receive and be spectators rather than ignite the spark within. And that spark within, it is that, I think it's that discomfort of okay, I know there's something else. I know I'm meant for something else, something more. There's a longing, there's a yearning within. I've heard people describe it as a sort of sadness, a sort of depression. What is sadness and depression?
Yeah.
I think a lot of it's not just about loss. It's about disconnection from your creative spark and your creative nature.
Yeah,
where
absolutely.
You're just pushing it down. You're pushing it down, whether you're doing it through sex, drugs, rock and roll, shopping, gambling, whatever it is. You are watching YouTube, being on social media and scrolling away. I know people who have intense, like, digital injuries from scrolling. I'm just like, what? And
why?
Because that's what they're doing all day. They're just scrolling. And it's just an intense time where you have all these sort of weaponized distractions to keep us apart from what really, really lights us up. So I think one of the important things that we have to really embody is the fact that we're here to create whatever that is, and it doesn't have to be a big deal.
No, yeah, it's not special. Like, what I always tell people is understanding objective morality, understanding truth, understanding that we're, part of the creator force and reality. This isn't special. It's not special. It's not mystical. It's not fancy. You don't have to put 8 billion $10 words in your explanation when you describe God or whatever.
Yeah.
Relax and just be like, okay, it's this and everybody's part of that and that's it. And okay, we know, move along. It's just relax a little bit. Everybody's very I think, that kind of thing too. It's like people don't feel validated.
Yes.
So they overcompensate with making it seem oh, I'm really smart, so I've got to display that in a way. And it's kind of you can be really smart and also not do that. So you could just relax and be a regular person and be able to, joke around with people and have that free will, spontaneous, because that's also part of reality. Even though I say all the time, we are creative fractions of source. We are the paintbrush. We're the paintbrush, all of us, in this beautiful physical reality. And even the people who are denying this and are actively being conditioned to not enact their power to that tap into that creative force, they still have it. They've just turned it off.
Yes,
and they don't know how to turn it back on because they don't understand. They're like, me with trying to figure out a new computer. I'm like, I don't even know where the on button is. Don't even ask me. like, give it to this guy, you
I
know?
can feel that. Yeah, I
So
get
it's
it.
like, and I just think that people need to, you know, if they figured out who they were, they wouldn't be so emotionally triggered and emotionally blackmailed by their environments. And I think that's what happens. And with the victimization part of it, you know, because they don't feel validated in, you know, some atrocity that did happen to them that should be validated. On the other hand, the person who was the victim of it should say something and do something about it.
Yes.
And like, you know, me and my husband both are big supporters. Like if somebody victimizes you in a way like such as child trafficking, or, you know, if you're a rape victim, or if you have a partner who beat you, or, you know, whatever the case may be, like if somebody murdered your child, you have a right to defend yourself physically if you must, instead of just going onto TikTok and going, I'm such a victim, and just crying about it. Like, because what does that do? That's not going to change anything in your environment. And doing something and saying something is what the personal responsibility part is.
Yeah.
So, you know, like even during that fake pandemic, you know, they were trying to put people like me in this like box and weaponize the quote vulnerable to make everybody else behave like these like dumb animals. And I was just like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not wearing masks. I'm not taking any kind of shots. I barely followed the advice to begin with, you know, like I wasn't really like a follower to begin with. Like somebody said to me too the other day that that's like an Aquarius type of trait. And I'm like, all right, I'll take it. Sure. So
yeah, good for you.
I'm just like, people need to start taking responsibility for the things that are happening. And even when things happen to them, you were the only one who's responsible for correcting that violation.
Yeah.
Because no one else is going to do it for you. And I think that is a big issue that's really stopping people from like understanding a lot of this kind of information, like what you're talking about. We do have we're gonna have you back on again, Marja. I
would love that.
I haven't like really officially announced it, but I am going to be expanding the show Crosstalk to 2 hours in January.
Sweet.
So
awesome.
The first week, I think it's Christmas week or the first week in January, Crosstalk will not be airing for the break. But the first week in January, Crosstalk is back on. Expect a 2-hour show. And we're going to be having some, you know, guests come back on and expand on some of the stuff we've already covered. So we're going to have Mara back to talk more about this stuff because it's pretty important, I think. And before we go, we've got about 10 more minutes or so. I want to go over your take on dealing with trolls, either on the internet or off, and how you deal with it. Now, how I usually deal with it is, you know, I might make fun of them a little bit, you know, because they try to get to me and I'm just like, okay. So you can't even hurt my feelings. I mean, like, what are you going to do that's going to upset me, you know? So what would your take be, and maybe your advice on dealing with trolls? Because that's a big problem with people getting triggered and they get all kinds of worked up.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that the trolls do for me is it's comical. Number one. So I poke a lot of fun. So I'm like you. And if something is really creative, like I've got a file of some of the most creative shit you've ever heard, where someone will actually take the time to upchuck like 9 paragraphs of what they think is fucking wrong with you. and they're creative. And then I get trolled about the bags under my eyes. I should color my hair. I should get Botox. I mean, shit like this, that is absurd. I mean, I'm just like, I'm sorry, I'm a grandma. I don't really care about that kind of shit at this point, not that I did anyway. So that's one of the things. But there are some where if I get my life threatened or harm threatened, because I've had death threats and shit like that, I will screenshot that stuff, I will report it, and I will block the person. So that's really the only time I block people. Otherwise, hey, you know what? You're free. You're free to do that kind of shit. I don't care. And, depending on the sort of intensity of it, I sometimes ignore it. Sometimes I'll just hit the laugh emoji, because it's just like people get creative and they actually take the time. I mean, a lot
you got
of
to
this,
give them credit for that. Like they're the creative force that they don't know how to tap into. It really starts to come out when they want to attack somebody in that kind of way.
Yeah.
It's like, well, why can't you use this energy in more of a healthier, positive way?
And do something creative. You don't like what I'm saying? Why don't you start your own thing and go at it instead of doing this? And then there are the trolls that will email me their life story. And so I've got a separate file on that where I have these ongoing people that email me on a regular basis and just go to town. And, it's like, I'm a busy person. I don't have the time to read through. Literally, I remember printing out an email and it literally was 29 pages long. 29 pages long. It was a novel, basically.
Write me a book, why don't you?
Fuck, that
let's publish it.
Crazy. Yeah. So I have a separate file where I have set an intention. It's a specific sigil that I have created for these people to, intentionally coming around and setting up the intention that they come around and get a little more conscious, more aware of what it is that they're doing, because I do have that, I'm a magnet for that kind of thing where people just want to tell me everything about themselves. So it's been a little, and I've learned this over the many decades of doing what I do. And my first YouTube channel, I started it in 2005, November 2005, just months after YouTube started. And, so I learned how to work it, and I've learned how to work keywords. So there is a lot of that. And for the most part now, I've got to moderate the comments. So I've got to approve them. And every now and then, the bot comments seem to slip through somehow. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. But some of them are just hilarious, where they're giving me an assessment, or these new age hoo-has go crazy and tell me that my karma is about to change, and if I don't watch it, I'm going to be murdered. I mean, just shit like that. And those are just like, wow, amazing. Like you said, very, very creative, but it's creativity misdirected, a lot of energy. I mean, it takes a lot of energy to write 29 pages and upchuck it in an email. It's just like, wow.
Yeah. And then what's even worse is that they're really taking you to school, right? But then they don't know how to edit it or be sure to correct the words that they're using, or what's one of the most the easiest words that they use is I don't know. It's just they misuse words, and it's just nonsense all the time. So anyway, that's all we have for today. That's the cue.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Marja, for coming on. We're gonna take us back up next year. And
Yeah.
thanks everybody for listening, and see you next week for another rambling on Crosstalk.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.
Join me on the Brian Ruhe Show on Revolution.